My name is Chloe, and I've always had a camera in my hand ever since I was a little girl. Growing up in a small town, I often found myself enchanted by the beauty of everyday moments. The way the sun sets over the hills, the way a child's laughter fills the air, or the quiet moments of people just living their lives. Each of these things held a story. I had a deep love for capturing them, preserving them forever with my camera. To me, photography was not just a hobby, it was a way of life. I remember the first time I picked up a camera. It was my mother's old camera, a film camera that had been sitting on the shelf for years. One day, out of curiosity, I decided to take it out and see what it could do. The first picture I took was of a flower in our garden. It wasn't anything special, but I was amazed by how something so simple could be captured and turned into something so meaningful. From that moment, I knew I wanted to become a photographer. As I grew older, my passion for photography only deepened. I spent countless hours practicing, learning about lighting, composition, and how to tell a story with a single frame. I saved up money from odd jobs and finally bought my first DSLR camera. It was a big moment for me, a step closer to my dream. I would spend hours in nature or at events, capturing candid moments and learning with each click of the shutter. I was determined to make it as a professional photographer one day. But the road to becoming a photographer wasn't easy. People often told me that it was a difficult path to follow. Photography doesn't pay the bills, they would say. There are so many photographers out there. What makes you different? These words stung, but they didn't stop me. I knew I had something special, something that set me apart from others. One of the things that always fascinated me about photography was how it could capture the truth. A single image could convey so much emotion, so many untold stories. A picture of a couple smiling in the sun could hide a lifetime of struggles. A child playing in the rain might seem carefree, but behind that moment, there could be a story of loss or hope. I realized that photography wasn't just about taking beautiful pictures. It was about revealing the hidden truths behind the smiles, the tears, and the moments we often take for granted. But despite my passion for capturing the perfect shot, something started to feel off. It was after one particular photo shoot that I began to question everything. I was at a local park, taking pictures of families, children playing, and people enjoying their day. I had the perfect shot of a young couple sitting on a bench, holding hands and looking at each other. It was one of those moments that made you believe in love. But as I took the picture, I couldn't help but notice the sadness in their eyes. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it was there. After the shoot, I approached the couple, trying to make small talk, but something felt wrong. The woman looked at me with a forced smile and said, "Thank you for the picture. It's just that we're going through some tough times, but it's nice to pretend for a moment that everything is perfect." I was taken aback. The picture I had captured was beautiful, but it was only a fraction of their reality. It made me realize that every picture I took was hiding something. Every smile, every joyful moment, was often a mask for something deeper. And that's when it hit me. The camera, the lens that captured the world, could never capture the full truth. There was always more to the story, a story that wasn't visible on the surface. I started to think about all the pictures I had taken over the years, the ones I thought were perfect, the ones I thought told a beautiful story. But now, I began to wonder how many of those images were simply illusions, carefully crafted moments that hid the struggles and pain people faced every day. Was I, as a photographer, contributing to this illusion? Was I only showing the world a version of reality that wasn't true? This realization made me question my purpose as a photographer. Was I just capturing the beauty of life, or was I also ignoring the darker, hidden parts of it? I couldn't ignore the fact that photography, while beautiful, could sometimes create a false narrative. It could take a moment and turn it into something that wasn't entirely real, something that only showed one side of the story. I started to see the world differently. Every moment I captured, I began to ask myself, what's the truth behind this? What's hidden from the camera's view? I wanted to capture the whole picture, not just the pretty moments, but the raw, unfiltered reality. It was a challenging thought, but it made me a better photographer. I began to take more candid shots, capturing people in their true essence, even if it wasn't always beautiful. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the camera wasn't the only way to capture truth. Sometimes, the most important stories were the ones that weren't seen in the pictures. They were the stories we told ourselves, the ones we kept hidden, the ones that no camera could ever fully capture. And so, my journey as a photographer took a turn. It wasn't just about taking pretty pictures anymore, it was about telling stories, real stories. I began to seek out people who were willing to share their truths with me, even the painful ones. I wanted to photograph the moments that mattered, the ones that weren't always perfect, but were real and raw. I started to realize that the true beauty of photography was not in showing the world what people wanted to see, but in showing them what they needed to see. It wasn't about capturing moments of perfection, but about capturing moments of truth, no matter how messy or uncomfortable they might be. I hope to be the kind of photographer who doesn't just show the world through a lens, but who makes people think about the stories behind the images. Because behind every smile, every happy moment, there's a story waiting to be told. And I want to be the one to tell it. And so, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer let the camera dictate what the world should see. I would be the one to uncover the truth, to capture the untold stories, and to let the world see life as it truly is. The good, the bad, and everything in between. As the months passed, my perspective on photography continued to evolve. I had come to understand that photography wasn't simply about capturing a moment. It was about conveying the essence of that moment, the emotions, the struggles, the untold stories. I no longer wanted to be the photographer who just captured a pretty face or a picturesque sunset. I wanted to be the one who brought out the truth in every shot, who highlighted the hidden layers of life that so often went unnoticed. At first, this approach was difficult. People didn't always understand what I was trying to do. I remember one particular shoot that left me questioning whether I was truly making the right choice. It was a family photo session, and I was hired to capture a family's happiness, their love for each other. The father, mother, and 2 young children were dressed in matching outfits, smiling broadly as I clicked away. It was a typical family photo shoot, the kind I had done countless times before. But as I observed them more closely, I noticed something odd. The father's smile didn't reach his eyes. The mother's laugh seemed forced, and the children, while playing, often exchanged worried glances. There was a subtle tension in the air, an undercurrent of something unspoken. As I clicked the shutter, I could feel it, an unspoken sadness hanging between them. But the pictures came out beautifully. They smiled in each shot, posed perfectly, and it seemed like a perfect family. But in my heart, I knew something wasn't right. When I sent them the photos, the family seemed pleased. They complimented me on how great the pictures looked and thanked me for capturing such perfect moments. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had missed something. I had captured their smiles, their exterior, but what about the cracks behind that smile? What about the struggles they were facing that no camera could ever reveal? I realized then that I was beginning to understand something deeper about life, about photography, and about myself. Life wasn't just about the moments we choose to show the world. It was about everything that happened behind the scenes, the things we kept hidden from view. It was about the emotions we kept locked inside, the pain we didn't share, and the moments of quiet struggle that went unnoticed. Photography had the power to capture beauty, but it also had the power to deceive. It could create a false reality, a picture-perfect world that hid the truth. And that's when I knew I had to take a step back. I had to rethink what it meant to be a photographer, what it meant to capture life through my lens. I started to take a different approach with my work. I stopped focusing solely on the aesthetic beauty of a moment and instead began to focus on the feelings that surrounded it. I started capturing the quiet moments, the ones when no one was posing, the ones when people let their guard down. I found beauty in the unspoken, in the moments of vulnerability. It wasn't always the most polished image, but it was always real. One day, I went to a local market to take photos of street vendors. I had heard stories of how difficult their lives were, how they worked tirelessly every day to make a living. The market was bustling with energy, people haggling over prices, children running around, and vendors shouting out their deals. As I walked through the market, I started snapping pictures. I took photos of the vendors arranging their goods, the old man selling vegetables, the young woman behind the counter at the fish stall. But as I watched them, I saw something different than what was visible to the casual observer. I noticed the old man's tired eyes, the way his hands trembled as he stacked the tomatoes. I saw the exhaustion in the young woman's face, how she smiled at customers but didn't have the energy to greet them properly. There was something beneath the surface, something that the camera could capture, but that no one else seemed to notice. It was the silent struggle of everyday life, the struggle to survive, to make ends meet, to keep going despite the hardships. I spent the entire day at the market, taking photos of these vendors in their raw, unfiltered moments. And when I showed them the pictures, they were surprised. They had never seen themselves like this before. They had never realized that their hard work, their resilience, could be captured in a way that was both beautiful and raw. It was a moment of truth for them, a moment of self-realization that their lives, no matter how difficult, were meaningful and deserving of attention. That day at the market was a turning point for me. I realized that photography was not about creating a perfect illusion of life, but about capturing the truth, however messy or imperfect it might be. It was about showing people the world as it really was, not as they wanted it to be. And that's when I truly understood the power of storytelling. Photography had the power to speak volumes without saying a word. It had the power to shed light on the unseen, to give voice to the silent struggles, and to create empathy in a world that often overlooked the small, unnoticed moments. But the more I focused on capturing the truth, the more I felt the weight of it all. It was as if I was carrying the world's burdens with each photo I took. I had always known that life was not perfect, but the more I photographed it, the more I realized how much pain and suffering were hidden behind the smiles and the cheerful faces. It was overwhelming at times, and I found myself questioning whether I could continue on this path. One day, I met a woman named Eleanor at a photography workshop. She was an experienced photographer, known for her work in documentary photography, capturing the struggles of people around the world. She had traveled to war zones, refugee camps, and poverty-stricken areas to document the stories of those who had been forgotten. She had seen things that I couldn't even imagine, and her work had earned her recognition and accolades. But despite her success, she told me that it was the hardest thing she had ever done. "Sometimes, Chloe," she said, "I wish I could go back to taking pretty pictures. I wish I could just capture the sunsets and the flowers, the things that make people smile. But the truth is, the world isn't always pretty. And as photographers, we have a responsibility to show that truth. It's not easy and it's not always fun, but it's the only way to make people understand what's really happening." Her words stuck with me. She was right. Photography was not just an art form. It was a way to make people see the world as it really was. It was a tool for change, a way to raise awareness and spark conversation. But it was also a heavy burden, one that required strength and resilience. The stories we told through our lenses had the power to change people's perspectives, but it also meant confronting the harsh realities of life. As I continued on my journey as a photographer, I realized that there was no going back. I couldn't simply focus on the beautiful moments anymore. I had to embrace the full spectrum of life, the joy, the pain, the triumphs, and the struggles. I had to tell the whole story, no matter how difficult it was. And so, I continued to photograph the world around me, always searching for the truth behind the lens. But I also made sure to remember the importance of balance. While it was important to capture the struggles, it was equally important to capture the moments of hope, of love, and of resilience. Because at the end of the day, life was not just about the pain, it was about finding beauty even in the darkest times. Photography was my way of telling the world what I saw, what I felt, and what I believed. It was a way to connect with people, to show them the truth, and to remind them that even in a world full of challenges, there was always something worth fighting for. And that was the lesson I wanted to share with the world. Life was messy, it was complicated, and it was often painful. But it was also beautiful, and it was worth capturing, worth telling, and worth cherishing. The truth was out there, and as a photographer, it was my job to find it and share it with the world.